In early 2019, amendments were made to our legislation which have raised the threshold for the requirement for mandatory reporting by treating practitioners.
It now makes it easier for health practitioners to seek advice in relation to their health issues, which is part of professional practice.
The changes to the mandatory reporting law seem to me to be a very compassionate move. I hope that people who are ill seek help and get well faster, and also that the care of patients is not impacted by people's health problem.
People often tell me that they're worried about getting help because they're frightened of mandatory reporting. But one of the best ways to avoid being reported is to get help early, before an illness becomes an impairment that may put the public at risk.
All too often, those working in the health professions leave getting help for themselves till far too late. We all tend to present late in the course of the illness when problems are more established than they need to be. If only we could look after ourselves as well as we look after our patients and seek help when we're concerned and nip problems in the bud.
I regularly speak to people on the phone who self-report low mood and sleep issues, but are worried about talking to their GP because they worry that if they do, they'll be reported, they might lose their registration and their income. I encourage them to seek help and get well.
The idea that we might lose our registration because we're seeking help to look after our own mental health or challenges is really not fact-based.
Fear of mandatory reporting should not be one of the factors that delays you in getting help for yourself, because mandatory reporting is actually incredibly rare.
If you are confident as a treating practitioner that your client does not pose a risk to the public, then we don't need to know.
For example, we often have practitioners or their colleagues notifying us that they have mental health issues, such as anxiety or depression. If these issues are well managed, the board doesn't need to know.
You may know health practitioners that get intoxicated in their personal life. We do not need to know about this unless that relationship with the alcohol affects their professional practice.
The board wants all health practitioners to make their health a priority. You need to take care of yourself if you're going to be able to take good care of others.
Mandatory notifications account for only a small proportion of the notifications we receive in any one year. The vast majority of notifications we receive are voluntary, and the vast majority come from patients and their carers.
Mandatory notifications are for situations where there is serious unmanaged risk to the public.
Even in the case of a notification actually being made against you, the board is really looking to support you and make sure you're safe and safe to return to practice. Seeking help early can make that possible.
Mandatory notifications can cause a lot of anxiety in practitioners, and I've been concerned about it in the past too. But the new legislation is drafted to reduce those anxieties, to clarify the process and make it really clear when a notification is necessary. It really isn't necessary to make a notification for every healthcare practitioner you see. It's only necessary if there's a risk of substantial harm. So the legislation provides more information and support so that we can be more mindful of when to make a report or a notification and when not to, and ultimately to make sure that healthcare practitioners get the help that they need without being worried about having notifications made that might not be necessary.
If you have questions about whether you need to make a mandatory notification, we encourage you to look at the Ahpra webpage, which has information containing the mandatory notification guidelines and frequently asked questions.